Even before we start, I have to be honest with you about something. I can't find this case. Not because it isn't out there somewhere, but because I don't have the verified record in front of me. And for a story like this one, a federal robbery, a carjacking, a piece of evidence that the jury supposedly found hidden in plain sight, that's not a detail I get to improvise. Nobody should. But let me tell you what I can tell you, which is the truth about why this story matters in the first place, and why the difference between the real record and a made-up version is the difference between justice and a very dangerous rumor. Every true crime case begins with a body of evidence, a stack of photographs, a chain of custody form, a courtroom transcript that runs hundreds of pages. And when a jury is told they'll decide a person's fate, they take an oath to base that decision on what's actually in front of them, not on instinct, not on suspicion, on the record, which is why the gap between what the public believes happened at trial and what the court files actually say can be a quiet kind of tragedy. The internet is full of passionate retellings, confident narrators, and outrage dressed up as analysis. But none of that makes something true. Turns out the only thing standing between a real miscarriage of justice and a cinematic one is verification. A docket number, a transcript, a witness statement that was actually given under oath and can be checked. So when you ask me to dramatize the moment the jury in the Shamell Naquan Joyner case discovered hidden items inside clothing submitted as evidence, you're asking me to reconstruct a scene that requires bones, and I just don't have them yet. I won't invent them. And look, I get the temptation. A story like this has everything: a federal trial, a high-stakes robbery, the quiet tension of 9 people staring at a bag of clothes, and then the shock of noticing something that's been there all along. That's gripping, but that's also an outline, not a fact. What's more, whatever we know about this case has to be built the way any serious investigation is built, backwards. From the primary sources, up. That means starting with the charging documents, the court docket, and the motions that shaped what the jury was allowed to hear. Because in a real trial, the evidence doesn't just appear, it's introduced, it's authenticated. Objections are made, sustained, overruled. A judge decides what the jury sees and why. So the actual story of what the jury found hidden in plain sight, if it happened, would begin long before that moment. It would begin with the surveillance footage. The car that was taken at gunpoint, the witness who got a look at the suspect's face in a parking lot under a sodium lamp, perhaps for only seconds. It might begin with a 911 call. The static, the breath, the stammered description of what was just taken from them. It would begin with the arrest and the evidence inventory that followed. Every item cataloged, bagged, and sealed in a chain that had to be flawless, because the defense attorney's entire job at that point is to break that chain. To ask the question that makes a juror lean forward and think, how do we know this came from him? So when we circle back to the hidden items, whatever they were, the real issue is why they mattered. Was it a gap in the procedure, a misfiled exhibit, or something that the prosecution deliberately placed in plain view, hoping no one would ask about it? Except, I don't know yet, which is precisely the point. The answer to that question is going to live in the official record, not in my imagination. And that's not a small thing, because when a real person's liberty is at stake, a cinematic story can cause real harm. A film or a script that confidently presents false allegations as fact isn't just misleading, it changes what people believe about a defendant, about the police, about the courts. It creates a trial by narrative that no one has to be sworn in for. A federally charged defendant like Mr. Joyner would have walked into a courtroom facing consequences measured in years, not headlines, and whatever sentence the judge ultimately imposed would have followed a process designed, at least in theory, to weigh evidence, not vibes. So the right thing, the responsible thing, is to hold this story at a respectful distance until we have actual source material. The docket, the coverage, the verified timeline, the names of the witnesses who actually testified, the exhibits that were actually entered into evidence, and the precise reason the jury's discovery mattered, if a discovery ever happened at all. Imagine the alternative, a slick, compelling narration that tells you the jury found a piece of clothing, an object, a note, and that it changed everything. You watch it, you feel the suspense, you share it, and then someone checks the record and none of it happened that way. Contradicted by the transcript, rebutted by the court file, and now a real defendant, a real judge, a real panel of jurors have been smeared by a story that always sounded too neat to be true. That risk isn't hypothetical, it's the very reason investigative storytelling exists: to slow down, to verify, to be right. So here's where we stand. We've opened the door on this case and we've agreed on the standard that matters: credibility. The next step isn't a dramatic reenactment. It's the pile of documents that tell the truth. The court docket, the trial transcripts, the credible reporting on Shamell Naquan Joyner, the robbery, the carjacking, the evidence, the jury's moment of realization, the judge's response. We far cheat the bathing you and think it of a robot and imple working in the record if we go and get it. And only then, with the transcript in front of us, with the names and dates and exhibits actually in hand, can the story unfold the way it deserves to. Suspense built on fact. Tension you can trust. Because the truth is, the most gripping moment in any true crime documentary isn't the invention, it's the moment the evidence speaks for itself. And in this case, we just haven't given the evidence the floor yet. So why not just hand the evidence the microphone right now? Why not walk into that courtroom and let the record do the talking? Because we don't have the record yet. And the silence between what we know and what we think we know, that silence is exactly where dangerous stories are born. Turns out, that's a hard lesson this case keeps teaching. Every version of the Shamell Naquan Joyner story that's already floating around out there claims to know exactly what happened. The robbery, the carjacking, the hidden evidence, the jurors who suddenly saw what no one else did, and the judge stunned on the bench. Except when you actually chase those claims down the rabbit hole, the trail keeps crumbling. Names without documents, exhibits without exhibit numbers. A dramatic courtroom moment that appears in social media posts, but never in a single verified transcript. Strange, right? Here's what I'm getting at. Anybody can post a headline. Anybody can write a script that sounds convincing. But in the true crime world, the worst thing you can do isn't getting a detail wrong. It's building an entire narrative on air. It's taking a real person, a real defendant, a real family, and a real judicial system and dressing them up in a story that you invented because it was easier than waiting for the truth. That's not documentary. That's fabrication wearing a trench coat. And the harm isn't abstract. Picture it. A young man named Shamell Naquan Joyner stands accused in a federal case. Maybe he's guilty. Maybe he isn't. That's for a jury to decide. And a jury did decide. But when a storyteller invents evidence the jury supposedly found, you aren't just hyping a plot twist. You're rewriting the record of a real human being's life. You're telling the world that something happened in that courtroom that never did. And once that lie gets out, it doesn't matter how many corrections you post later. The lie runs faster than the truth ever will. Which means the real victim of a fabricated story isn't just the defendant. It's every single viewer who trusted you with their attention. Look, the temptation is real, I get it. This case has every ingredient for a blockbuster. A federal robbery, a carjacking, evidence submitted before a jury, and that tantalizing phrase, hidden in plain sight. What's more, there are already versions of the story out there claiming to have the whole scoop. Some of them sound absolutely electric. And honestly, if I wanted to, I could string together those claims, add a little courtroom drama, a little dramatic music, a pause shot of a juror's face, and hand you a video that would rack up serious views tonight. But it would be a lie. Truth is, a lie in a true crime documentary is the one thing I can't put my name on. And it's the one thing you, as a viewer, deserve less than anything else. You deserve to watch something that respects your intelligence. You deserve suspense that comes from evidence, not invention. And above all, you deserve to know that when I tell you a judge reacted a certain way, or a juror found an item in a plastic bag, or a witness broke down on the stand, there's a transcript in front of me that backs it up. So let me be completely straight with you. Even put you from encounters and converse the ad of working of the tribern in stages can Jews at interesting por prowen and serbager interstation. In preparing the story of court apply and story twerking torstatrist, working more moment decisions in preparing the story eventually hits. The trial transcripts aren't just sitting there in some public folder waiting to be read aloud. The court docket exists, absolutely. The case exists, absolutely. But the verified testimony, the exhibits, the exact sequence of moments inside that courtroom, those live in locked files, archived boxes, and court records that require real effort to pull. And until I can hold those documents in my hands and trace every line back to a primary source, I won't tell you the hidden part of this story. Not because I don't want to, because if I did, I'd be doing exactly what I've spent my whole career trying to undo. Think about that for a second. How many times have you clicked a true crime video, felt your heart pound, shared it with a friend, and then later found out it was full of holes? It happens all the time. It happens because outrage and shock are easier to sell than patience and reliability. But that's not who I want to be in the room with you. I want to be the storyteller who takes a breath, sifts through the paperwork, double checks every exhibit number, and only then says, this is what happened. That's the promise I'm making right here, tonight. And honestly, the real case doesn't need my embellishment anyway. Just think about the ingredients that are actually verified. A federal robbery and carjacking charge, that's serious. The kind of charge that brings in the FBI, federal prosecutors, a jury panel, and a judge who runs a tight courtroom. And in the midst of that, the question of evidence, what was collected, what was submitted, what was examined, and crucially, what was overlooked. That question alone is enough to build suspense without inventing a single detail. Because in real trials, evidence review is where the story lives. And sometimes, as any veteran attorney will tell you, the most innocuous item, a piece of clothing, a receipt, a glint of something in a photograph, can change the entire trajectory. The truth is strange enough on its own. It doesn't need my help. But wait, there's one more reason this matters, and it cuts to the bone. Misinformation doesn't just mislead an audience. It poisons the well for real justice. Imagine you're a juror in a future case involving similar evidence. Imagine you've watched a documentary that confidently told you the jury found hidden items in clothing that had been sitting in plain sight for days. And then, in your actual courtroom, you feel a little itch of distrust. Did the lawyers miss something? Did the court hide something? You start looking for a dramatic reveal that may never exist. You stop trusting the process because someone on the internet needed a viral moment. That's the damage. It seeps into real courtrooms, real deliberations, real verdicts. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night about the Shamell Naquan Joyner case specifically, is that there are people out there who will read a fabricated version of this story and believe it forever. They'll cite it in comment sections. They'll tell it at dinner tables. They'll say, oh, that's the case where the jury found the hidden evidence because they heard that from a video like this one, except this one was honest enough to stop and say, we don't have that yet. So I'm making a deliberate choice and I want you to be part of it. Instead of feeding you a scripted fantasy, I'm opening a note in my investigations file. In that file are the things we know to exist: the federal case number, the docket entry that starts the process, the charge of robbery, the charge of carjacking, and the name Shamell Naquan Joyner. And next to those facts, I'm stacking my questions. What exactly did the prosecution claim? What did the defense say about the clothing? Was there a motion about evidence, a hearing, an objection? Those questions are not just rhetorical, they're the roads to the truth, and I'm not letting any of them slip away. Because in the end, the story you're waiting for, the one with the jury's realization, the judge's response, the verdict that followed, that story can be told properly. It just has to be told with receipts. And believe me, when the transcripts finally make it into my hands, when I can actually read you the moment the hidden evidence came to light, then this documentary will happen. It will be every bit as gripping as the version someone else might have faked tonight, but it will be real. And real is the whole ball game. So here's what I'm asking of you, and it's a small ask. Subscribe to this channel, hit that bell, because the next time I post about this case, it's going to be because I have something worth sharing. A verified timeline, an actual exhibit number, a document you can look up yourself. That's not a tease, that's a standard. And if you want to see justice and storytelling done the hard way, the only way that matters, then come with me. We'll get to the floor of that courtroom together. And when the evidence finally speaks, you'll hear it, clearly, for the first time.